The following program is an original production of WYCC PBS Chicago.
Tonight, 500,000 reasons to change immigration laws. The big push for more than 500,000 undocumented immigrants in Illinois to stay here legally. No more polio, an 87-year-old Arlington Heights woman on the front lines. Her dream of a polio-free world and her remarkable efforts to make that happen. Plus, another day, another Chicago child shot dead, this time a 6-month-old baby girl. Should the state remove children from parents with a history of violence? And holy smokes, a puff of white smoke rises from the Sistine Chapel, and more than 2 million Chicago area Catholics are among those welcoming a new pope. These stories tonight on In the Loop. Good evening, I'm Chris Bury. Barbara Pinto is off this week. Tonight we take an in-depth look at immigration reform. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin is among Democrats and Republicans joining forces for a brand new federal law. It would directly impact more than 500,000 undocumented immigrants living in Illinois. Many are now living in fear of being deported and losing their shot at the American dream. The chants of nearly 1,000 Chicagoans marching from the city's west side to the Loop in support of immigration rights and a new path to American citizenship.
Today you're part of history again. This is the fourth time that undocumented people take the stage and declare themselves as undocumented and unafraid and unapologetic.
Protesters said they were angry over the slow pace of immigration reform. One of the organizers, the pastor of a church in the Little Village neighborhood, had harsh words for the president.
President Obama is a liar. He has been just rhetorical and he has not been practiced what he says.
One major sore point is the record number of deportations during the Obama administration. According to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, more than 400,000 people were deported in 2012, the most of any year in the nation's history, an increase of 3% over the previous year. 55% of those deported were convicted criminals. Supporters of reform say those deportations are tearing families apart, that too often working parents are deported, leaving spouses and children behind.
95% of my congregation being affected by the Homeland Security. We have 300 families now currently at this day that they've been totally separated, and the children are crying and looking for their parents.
America, of course, is a nation of immigrants. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, millions settled throughout the country. Chicago became one of the biggest melting pots. Now, nearly 1 in 5 Chicagoans was born in another country. The number of immigrants has tapered off in recent years, but the Chicago area remains among the most ethnically diverse cities, with large European, Chinese, African, and Hispanic immigrant populations. The Munoz family came to America from Mexico. Ana Munoz is fearful her father, Afrian, will soon be deported. He marched with chains to dramatize his plight after federal agents detained him at his workplace. At his side, the wife and daughter he may be forced to leave behind.
He's the one that maintains us in the house. He pays everything. He brings us food and everything to the house. He supports us.
We are real people, that those of us who are undocumented and are being deported are family members, community members, students.
About 9 in 10 of those being deported are Latinos, but the Get Tough policy also impacts immigrants from places including Korea, India, China, and the Philippines.
So we have millions of our people who are undocumented, who came to the U.S. on visas and have overstayed, in search of a better life for the same reasons that other people have come here.
The protesters called on President Obama to impose a moratorium on deportations in order to keep families together.
I'm a citizen, my mom's a citizen, and my sister was a citizen, and she died for the country. I mean, who else can be more American than people who lose a family member in the military?
Emotions running high at that rally. Joining us to look at the backstory are Sylvia Puente, she's Executive Director of the Latino Policy Forum, and Antonio Olivio, immigration and urban affairs reporter from the Chicago Tribune. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
We heard that call for an end to deportations. Why, when you also hear that more than half of those being deported are criminals, Sylvia?
Well, I think your setup just captured the story beautiful of the paradox and the contradictions that are going on in this nation right now. That we are calling and supposedly on a path towards comprehensive immigration reform to fix our broken immigration system, yet 11,000 people are being deported on a daily basis. And even though the president put in a memorandum that says that priority is supposed to be given to those who are criminals, we see that people are being deported whose only crime is that they were driving their children to school and they get pulled over by the police.
But the federal agent, ICE, says that 25% of those being deported have drug convictions, so it's not just minor infractions.
No, it's not just minor infractions, but your own setup said that about 50% of those are those who have committed some kind of criminal offense, but the others are moms and dads and students and people who are just trying to live a life and earn a living to maintain their family.
Why shouldn't there be a consequence for being here illegally? In every other country practically in the world, if you are caught there illegally, you are deported. Why shouldn't there be such a consequence here?
The Latino Policy Forum, and I think most of our friends in the immigrants' rights community would say that our immigration system is broken. And it's broken because while we put all of the attention on the people who might have crossed the border in an unauthorized manner to provide and feed and maintain their family's survival, we fail to look at the economic consequences and the economic pull that enable those people to come. For every single one of them that came, there was a job almost waiting for them. For every meal that we eat in a restaurant, it is subsidized by the labor, primarily of these individuals. So we pay a lot of attention to the individuals, but we aren't looking at the bigger, more holistic system of why people are coming to this nation. And in fact, the true economic benefits that have been provided to all of us who eat our salad every day and eat in restaurants on a regular basis.
Antonio, big front page story in your newspaper this week saying there was a possible breakthrough in immigration reform with 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats joining forces. Give us a reality check. Is there going to be a big break here?
Yeah, I believe there will be a big break this year, but it's important to remember that what is being discussed between those 8 senators essentially is a starting point. We learned back in 2007 that initial proposals were altered, lots of argument on both sides of the issue, so that will likely change by the time we see a vote.
We've heard so much talk about this path to citizenship. What would that really look like when the rubber meets the road?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen, honestly. I mean, I think the proposal that's out now gives it, I think it's an 8-year time frame for those who are in the country illegally to be put on the path for citizenship after they pay certain fines and pay back taxes that may be owed. But it will be, we know, I think, a bureaucratic process, and that itself will have its own problems.
And how long are people going to have to wait, you say 8 years before they get, at least 8 years?
Because the challenge with even that vocabulary, in my opinion, is that we're saying 8 to 10 years, but we're also saying back of the line. And the challenge and the reason why we have so many unauthorized people is there really is no line. Because if there is a line, it's 20 to 25 years to be able to get a visa to come into the United States for some individuals. So I see a bit of a contradiction between saying this 8 to 10 year time frame and the back of the line. And the devil really is going to be in the details to see how they define all of those things, to see how long people have to wait. But let's not also forget that what's being put out there too, especially by the House, is that there may not be a path to citizenship. We're really pleased that the Senate proposal calls for a path to citizenship, but there are some that are saying no path to citizenship, maybe a new kind of status where people will be able to live and work in the United States. So there is going to, I think, be a big debate on this issue, and it's not at all clear in terms of what the terms will be and how it's resolved.
We heard a lot of anger in that rally in Chicago over the weekend, and one of the organizers, in fact, called President Obama a liar. Is that justified?
You know, there is a lot of frustration, I think, in all of the immigrant communities and in the Latino immigrant community in particular. It is true that President Obama did not fulfill his campaign promise that he made to us, that he would have comprehensive immigration reform in his first year in office. Now, we understand that it's difficult sometimes for politicians to keep all of their promises. And it's also...
You're kidding. That's a lightning bolt.
And it's also difficult, I think, when you can't do it alone, because the president can't do it alone. He has to do it with Congress. So I think it's a matter of interpretation. I will share my own personal frustration, and that what the President Obama did in his 4th year of office, calling for both deferred action and DACA, which are the provisions that allow youth who were brought to this country by their parents to be able to at least now temporarily work in the U.S., and those that supposedly stem criminal deportations, although they're not, happened in his 4th year of office when they could have easily have happened in his 1st year of office.
Antonio, we often look at this as a Latino issue or a Hispanic issue, but when you look at Chicago, isn't it much broader than that?
Of course. There are large communities from Poland, from India and Pakistan, from China, from Korea. I mean, this is Chicago. This is a city of immigrants. And it's a fight that has been led primarily by the Latino community. They've been out there more during marches. You see more Latino faces than any other faces, but you know, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are not from Latin America who stand to be affected by any kind of immigration reform. And I think that, just to touch on Sylvia's early point, what this is really a divisive issue. Neither side is happy about deportations. On the left, you have people who are saying there are too many deportations going on. On the right, there aren't enough deportations. Both sides believe that President Obama is a liar.
And this battle is going to rage on once we know what the bill actually is.
Yes.
Sylvia and Antonio, thank you so much for joining us. An 87-year-old woman from Arlington Heights is spending her retirement years at war. She's battling a global health crisis that many Americans considered a thing of the past. Barbara Pinto has the story of one woman's amazing fight.
At age 87, Mary Stitt is a great-grandmother and a soldier on the front lines of the global war on polio.
It's become my mission, especially when I see the people crawling on the ground like they are in Nigeria.
Images of children afflicted with the disease haunt her. So do memories from childhood.
When I was in junior high, one of my classmates, over the weekend, her sister got polio and died. That was a shock to the whole town. And there wasn't anything you could do.
Now there is, and Mary has made it her mission, traveling with Rotary International to deliver the 60 cents worth of medication that protects each child from polio.
You take this off, and then you open the mouth and put in 2 drops.
Just 2 drops.
Only 2.
She's also helped provide hundreds of wheelchairs for victims of the crippling disease.
When you can stand and when you can move around, it restores your dignity as a human being.
Mary retired 21 years ago, a school principal so beloved they named the school after her. In her 4 trips to Nigeria, she's earned respect there, too.
They call me Mama Mary, or they call me Grandma. They respect and admire older people. They make over me. Sure, I like that.
Arthritis makes it tough for Mary to administer the vaccine, so she inks children's fingers to show they've been immunized. It's dangerous. Militant groups targeted and killed polio workers in recent months, but Mary keeps going. Pins in the map above her desk remind her of the places she's left her mark.
They say we're this close. Yes, I would love to be part of that, finishing it.
That is the message Rotary International promotes in this celebrity-studded commercial.
We are this close.
This close.
We're down to 3 remaining endemic countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria. There's no reason it can't be eradicated elsewhere in the world.
Rotary estimates it will take $5 billion and 5 years. Mary Stitt is ready. She hopes to celebrate her 90th birthday in a polio-free Nigeria.
And that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
Since 1985, Rotary International and partners, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, and the CDC, have raised more than $1 billion to eradicate polio. Helping the poor and sick has been a lifelong mission of the new Pope, Francis I, an Argentinian, the first Pope from the Americas. And here to share their thoughts on this story and more, actress and comedian Nora Dunn. Jaime Dominguez, political science professor at Northwestern University, and Kitty Kurth, president of Kurth Lampe, a public relations and consulting firm. So here in Chicago, in the Chicago area, we have more than 2 million Catholics. Jaime, what do you think this new pope, the choice of this pope, means to that population?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that the fact that they've elected a new pope brings a sense of normalcy to the church. But I think also just from a representation standpoint, the fact that we have a Latino pope from the Western Hemisphere for the first time, I think is significant from a symbolic standpoint. I also think that there's a great opportunity here for this new pope to reinvigorate the church, I think, and also to kind of help steer the church away from these turbulent times that we saw under the previous pope.
Well, what about that, Nora? I mean, do you think that this pope may restore some faith in a church, at least in the United States, that's been really shaken by these scandals over the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, I think my faith would have been restored. When I heard it was Pope Francis, I thought maybe it was a woman. And I think I would be thrilled to have a female pope who was in her 40s, who believed in birth control, gay marriage, and some of the issues that we in America have accept as Catholics. I was raised Catholic. So although as I was raised Catholic, I am, I get that feeling. I'm thrilled that we have a pope. I like that he's a Jesuit. I like that he leads a very modest lifestyle, and he may bring a warmer and more open face to the church, but he still represents.
So you see this as kind of a conventional choice.
It's very conventional,
in many ways. Kitty, how about you? Does this send a big message? I mean, a Latino pope, a pope who, by all accounts, is a humble man, lives simply, cares for the poor and sick.
It sends a message, and an incremental message. Like Nora, I was very happy to hear that he was a Jesuit, but at first I thought that maybe he was a liberal theology Jesuit, and I guess not so much. But I like that he's worked with the poor. I think it's great that he's from Latin America, not from Europe. They're looking to where the growth of the church is and where the people of the church are. But I think it's incremental change. It's not. I think I would have been with you on, the whole opening up women.
But can you possibly be surprised by that?
No.
No, I mean that's what you would expect from a very conservative institution. But again, I think that the opportunity could be there. But of course, we're going to have to wait and see what happens.
Nora, you're a pope for a day. We're going to give you this great opportunity.
Get me my robes.
What is the one big change you would make if you were a pope for the day?
I think the human rights issues I think would be. I hope they do open up and challenge some of these. We're full of problems in the world. There's big issues, and I do hope that they come out for poverty, helping people who are in poverty, and also supporting nuns who are helping people in poverty. I'd like to see the nuns have a much more respectable position in the church because they are doing, the work that we're supposed to be doing. So I would, but I definitely would come out for birth control, and I would say we welcome everybody in the world. It's kind of an organization where if they saw clearly what was happening, they would open up and not become more conservative. I grew up under the Pope, John the 23rd, and he was a great Pope.
One message that I think that everybody here could probably agree on is that the Pope would bring a message of peace, especially here in Chicago, where just this week yet another Chicago child, this time a 6-month-old baby, was shot dead. You're a political consultant. What advice would you possibly give the mayor and the police superintendent?
I wish I had a magic wand, and that's not how it works. We work here in Chicago on issues of nonviolence, but also we're trying to work in Africa for truth and reconciliation. I was in Northern Ireland a few years ago, and what I learned there was the way that the peace treaty there had come was when people finally looked at one another and said, okay, we've been fighting our whole lives, but we don't want our children's lives to be like that. Parents and teachers and police and the mayor all need to decide that we don't want our children to live in a world where we can walk out of the studio and see 10 kids shot in a week. Everybody's got to decide, everybody's got to come together. This has to be, we need a Marshall Plan for nonviolence.
We're seeing these children. We saw Hadiya Pendleton, the 15-year-old girl, and now the 6-month-old baby. Is there something that can be done specifically? Some have suggested that the state, the Department of Child and Family Services, may have to go in and remove more children when they are being raised by violent parents. And according to what we read, the father here was a gangbanger, 30-year-old with a long criminal record. I mean, should these infants be removed, Jaime, from homes like this?
I think that's it's a difficult question because, again, you're talking about taking kids away from families. But if we think about just the long-term implications of this, the fact that, we talk about violence amongst children, but now we're talking, the face has changed. And these are infants. This is an infant. I mean, it really struck me. And I think for parents who are in that kind of activity where they really put their kids in a very fragile and tenuous position on an everyday basis, I think, yes, that the interest of that child should definitely supersede the parents' need, willingness to want to hold on to that child.
I've got a different idea. I think you can't take you can't anticipate when every child is going to be in a bad situation. You can't take them away from their parents. But what I've seen in my work in the communities here is a lot of the parents need to know they haven't been parented and they need to know how to parent. And I think that if we spent as much time talking about nonviolence with the parents and with the kids in school and teach people about conflict resolution, teach people that there's another way, but you can't start it now when somebody's 50 and expect them to get it. You've got to start when people are little, and you've got to, maybe we need to treat the whole family, not just the 15-year-old who shot someone. Maybe
Nor
we
what
need
if
to
the child is in a family where the parents, a gang member? We take that child away?
I don't think you can. I think that what we always cut from budgets first is aid to children. And we don't have enough social workers. We don't even believe in having social workers. And yet it is proven statistically that parents in those situations in poverty and violence, if they have a social worker that's teaching their children at a young age, like just hugging them, holding them, talking to them, that those children have a better chance of not joining gangs. So I think that it's an issue of a lot of things. Gun control, get the guns off the street, punish people who are manufacturing guns in Indiana and bringing them over to us. I mean, we have to put all of our efforts into that.
We have to make our weekly trip down to Springfield to see what's going on. And this week, the big issue, gay marriage. Michael Madigan, the speaker, has come out and said, doesn't have the votes. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. What's your thought on that as a political operative?
Well, I've been working a little bit on this issue with a lot of my friends in the House and in the Senate. And the Senate, did the right thing. I think in the House, it's a question of time. I heard a couple of the representatives.
So you think it's going to happen?
I think it's going to happen. It might not happen this session, but things have been moving really quickly to my way of thinking as a political operative. I'm always optimistic, but I think we've made
You're in favor,
huge.
Obviously.
Absolutely. I'm in favor of equal rights for everybody. Absolutely. Someday maybe we'll get the Equal Rights Amendment so that Nora and I can be equal to you guys.
Jaime, we had a case this week where a couple of big sports heavyweights weighed in. Ernie Banks from the Cubs and Richard Dent, former. Does that kind of thing make a difference?
Well, I think, again, just from a symbolic standpoint, it can make a difference. The fact that these are individuals who people look up to. These are individuals who are in the community, who are well respected, and that again, they have a position on a controversial issue. But the fact that they see this just in terms of the long-term benefit for us as a society here living in Chicago or in the state of Illinois, that's something that's good policy and something that we need to support as residents.
Moving from matters of the heart to matters of the stomach, Taste of Chicago is under fire. Some aldermen want to kill it. Some aldermen want to dramatically cut it back because basically it's a lot of fun, it lasts a long time, and it loses millions of dollars. What do you think about that?
Well, I hate to see anything like that. I think Chicago is such a great city all summer long, a city of festivals and music, and Taste of Chicago is it's one of our kind of it's a landmark kind of thing. I stopped going because it's too crowded. So I don't know how they're losing money, but I guess it's security and crowd control and all that kind of thing.
I think bringing back better entertainment is a move in the right direction to make it about a festival, not just about food.
Yeah, but it's losing well over $1 million a year. Can the city is bleeding red ink? I mean, can it afford something as
I don't think it can.
Obviously
it cannot. Not when we have all these different issues. Look at what's happening now with education and the closing of all these schools. There isn't any money, and to somehow justify sustaining such a venue, an entertainment venue, over those kinds of more important priorities, then I think from a governing standpoint, it's very difficult to make the case.
So you'd vote to kill it?
I would vote to completely reinvigorate it, I mean, no doubt about it. And that's for kind of maybe a first step in the right direction. Interesting, I mean, the fact that it's becomes, the city's losing all this money, yet it's so expensive to go. Even for a family of four, it's so expensive to go on that. You know, that's what you want to bring back too. I also would like to see different folks
maybe lower the prices
the
and make more money, because if families can come.
Absolutely.
Is there a compromise here, Nora, that can save this thing?
I don't know, because I don't know a lot about budgets and money and how much things cost. I think it just became a behemoth, though. Yeah, but it just became, to me, too big. You know, and maybe shrink it down and have it last longer, or have it. The crowd control to me was what made me stop going. I felt it was just too jam-packed, and then it was hot, and I didn't want to get salmonella. You know, but not that I ever heard those things happening, but.
10 seconds, is it going to survive?
We'll see.
I think it'll survive in the short term.
Long term, that's the perfect
sure.
answer from a political consultant, right? What we'd expect. Thank you very much for joining us on the roundtable today. We appreciate it. One WBEZ listener raised the question, do urban archaeologists ever examine construction sites to see what treasures may be buried underneath? Our partners at Curious City dug up an answer.
I'm Susie Ahn. I'm a reporter and producer for 91.5 WBEZ. Curious City listener Dr. Linda Rudy of Old Town wants to know,
if urban archaeologists ever took a look to see what was down there when they were doing road repair work or digging foundations and things like that.
Where does it go? Way down, down, down. Well, where does it go? Way down, down, down. Well, where does it go? Way down, down, down. The deep, dark hole in the ground.
The short answer? Sometimes. Just not very often. Because more often than not, it's not archaeologists, it's construction workers making the discoveries. And unless they find human remains or a grave site, they're not required to stop and examine anything. But any odds and ends they do find, like marbles or teapots from the Great Chicago Fire, sometimes gets donated here. Or other times they just get taken home. But what about the archaeologists? How do they ever discover anything? Well, some urban archaeologists have to take matters into their own hands. Rebecca Graff of the University of Chicago decided to dig around here, the Museum of Science and Industry, formerly known as the Palace of Fine Arts at the World's Columbian Exposition. Why here?
No one had actually excavated in this area, and it just seemed like such an important part of Chicago history that it would be interesting to see what, if anything, was left from the fair.
Here's what she found.
Milk bottles, bits of plate, roof tile, and plaster and wood, and we found railroad spikes.
Anything else? Rebecca said they found plasters of the old Ohio State Building there, though newspaper accounts of the time say that the building was thrown into Lake Michigan.
You don't love me, way down.
More Chicago treasures way down below. We're excited to tell you about our new website launching Friday. Check it out. Just go to WYCC.org. Now you will be able to vote on the next Curious City question. Take your pick, then stay tuned to see if your choice is the next one that WBEZ tackles. That's it for this week's show. You are now in the loop. The conversation continues right now on WYCC.org. I'm Chris Bury. We'll see you next week, and good night.